Ladies and gentlemen, would you put your hands together and welcome the speaker, Krish Dhanam. Krish, becoming my great friend, and I have an award, 2011 RIMI Partnership Award, presented on behalf of the RIMI board to Krish Dhanam. With a grateful appreciation for your commitment to world missions, especially for your influence as a Christian business leader in many lives in the US and beyond through your motivational speaking and preaching. Daniel 12:3, those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Chris, thank you.
The old saying is that most Indians begin speaking with an apology. Most Americans begin speaking with a joke. Being an Indian in America, I want to apologize that I don't have a joke. I'm an Indian by birth, an American by choice, a husband by union, a father by blessing, a Christian because of Calvary, and an evangelist by birth. Today I want to share with you very simple precepts, but one life, one heart, one purpose. How to have a life to live, a love to lift, and a legacy to leave. How do you glow as part of humanity? From womb we begin, and at tomb we end. Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I formed thee in the belly I knew thee, and before thy camest forth out of the womb I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet to the nations. Saji's journey and my journey are fairly similar with a roundabout message. He was raised in orthodoxy and decided to rebel with evangelism, bore the wrath of his family, the consternation of his neighbors, was sent away and returned to glory. I was raised in an Orthodox Brahmin family in rural South India, coming from the highest of the castes. A corporate evangelist by the name of Zig Ziggler led me to Christ in '93, and the consternation in my own family began. But life has its own twists and turns as things matter. A life to live. If you only have one heart that is designed for adoration, that is purposed for love, love then no longer is an action which families can betray. Love is no longer an emotion which people can neglect. Love becomes an ethic that transcends time. One of the women talked about in the early award giving was Amy Carmichael. Labored for 51 years without furlough. Now when I saw the American missionary in India, it did nothing to move my heart, because I thought there were people trying to corrupt a nation, influence an idea, and indoctrinate a populace. When I went to the lands that these people came from, the Scotland of Amy Carmichael, the America of Adoniram Judson, the England of Henry Martyn, and I saw the grandeur and splendor of what they left to come to the dust-ravaged roads of my motherland, I knew what one heart meant. A life to live. Most of us wake up in the morning, stand in front of that mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, do I have a prayer at all? If the mirror ever looked back at you and said, with that kind of hairdo, go back to bed, listen to the mirror. If you walk out in this world looking like the picture on your driver's license, or like you've been weaned on a pickle, ain't nobody going to treat you like a glamour shot. If you are built in the image of God, and you can see His splendor when you stand in front of that mirror, and you know you have one life to live, one heart to adore, and one purpose to belong, we have to say, mirror, mirror on the wall, here I am, what's my call? In January of 2006, riding the height of corporate glory as a vice president of business operations and global consulting. I don't update my resume anymore because, as Fred Smith said, what they say about you before you begin to speak, don't worry about it, that's mandatory. Worry about the acknowledgement you may get when you're finished, that could be pity. I've now traveled to 55 countries, every continent that has people, 47 of the states. But I remember in January of 2006 when I asked myself, what is this life worth? I had to make a decision. Walk away from a 6-figure salary and a corner office and a secretary, start a small training company and a ministry, and trust the God of providence. Because when I went to the homes of the American missionaries in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and from their backyard saw the beauty of the Smoky Mountains, where if you were to compare narrative for narrative, a good, honest human being could actually look at the Smoky Mountains and says, creation could have begun here, it's that beautiful. Why would you leave that looking out of your back door and decide to go into the jungles of Andhra Pradesh as a medical missionary? What did Amy Carmichael say? We profess to be strangers and pilgrims in search of a country we can call our own, but then settle in the most unstranger-like fashion, exactly as if we were quite at home and intended to stay as long as we could. I love her postscript. I don't believe apostolic miracles have died. Apostolic living surely has. The God of the universe, in his infinite majesty, gave me the privilege of coming to you, the yacht people, when I ran away from my country, trying to search for a land of my own. I came to America to make my fame and fortune, became a global vice president, traipsed the heights of corporate glory, was getting paid to flap my gums. And today he sends me back to India to speak for free. Majesty. One life. Now one heart that is purposed for adoration. Daily the Troubadour was written about in the 1940s. Here's what it went. First, dentistry was painless. Then bicycles were chainless. Then carriages were horseless and many laws enforceless. Soon cookery was fireless, telegraphy was wireless, coffee was caffeineless, and cigars nicotineless. Then oranges were seedless, the putting green was weedless, the college boy was hatless, the proper diet fatless. Now our motorways are dustless, our new steel is rustless, our tennis courts are sodless, and our new religions godless. What are our gods? If this heart was designed to adore a Savior who at Calvary said, "It is finished," there is nothing you can do that is good enough that will get you in. I hope you support this endeavor. When I met Saji a couple of years ago at the Connects conference that Sam puts together to bring people of South Asian origin to give them leadership skills, we had heard about each other's reputation through mutual friends, and I was given the book, Transformed for a Purpose. Sitting in a first-class seat on the ride back to Dallas, because the airline gives me privileges. As Dr. Ravi Zacharias says, probably the most dangerous place to be in the world is the airplane, because God chose not to be there, because he says in the Bible clearly, "Lo, I'll be with you always." I opened the book and began to read the confluence of stories. I think your daughter was born in 93, my son was born in 93. We look, they have one, we have one. But I began to read the story. Not the example. Folks, don't get caught up in the example, because each life has to live itself. Each heart has to adore itself, and it is designed in a specific way. Dr. Martin Luther King said, God has given everybody some amount of talent. He has given some more than others, but not left anyone without any. We are unique. We are wonderful, fearfully made. 7 billion will walk this planet during your lifetime. There's not another just like you. You're unique. Amen. So I was not worried about the example, though it broke my heart that a father would put a knife to a son. It broke my heart that he would beat him by tying him to a tree. I never went through that persecution because my father did not understand. But there was a confluence of stories of an eternal Father who says, seek unto me in Jeremiah, and I will show you great and mighty things you cannot comprehend. And that comprehension began to change from the inside out. Could me, someone, see, I graduated in that half of the class that usually makes the top half possible. How can I be a preacher, a reacher, and a teacher? How can I be a motivational speaker? Most days I'm upset at myself. And then I began to realize a life to live and a heart to adore needs a purpose to conform to. Howard Hendricks from Dallas Seminary says your career is what you're paid for. Your purpose is what you're made for.
Yes. Hallelujah.
Dr. Adrian Rogers says the Bible is God's love letter to his children. If you're not feeling loved, you're reading someone else's mail.
Amen.
So I began to open the pages of this book and wanted to see if within it it would give me purpose. Could I, an average person, like Saji, an average person, have an impact on the world and a heart and a life and a purpose that is just completely transformed and radically sold out? I began to read the pages of the Bible and came across a cast of characters that gave me a lot of hope. Moses stuttered. Abraham was too old. Naomi was a widow. Rahab was a prostitute. Zacchaeus was too short. Timothy had an ulcer. Peter was a guy who was dodging, and guys, Lazarus was dead. And this is the cast of characters. People today ask me, Krish, do you believe all of the Bible? Folks, I actually believe the Bible from Genesis to maps. People say Genesis to maps. Think about it. None of the problems in this world are from Genesis to Revelation. All the argument is about the maps. Does the word sound familiar? A man with a broken heart for his village and his nation puts up a map on the wall and says, give me India or let me die. See, I cry when I watch videos. Pray for India. All my family doesn't believe. I'm not as lucky as him. But you can love. If you have a life to live, a love to lift, and a legacy to leave, you can learn how to glow for this Jesus. By the G in the glow formula stands for give more than you have. Give more than you have. I remember when I walked away from that corporate position and a dental benefit and a mental benefit. Yesterday, when I was getting ready to leave the house to come to, and tomorrow I fly to India. Yesterday, as I was getting ready to head up to Chicago, my bride and I, we were enjoying a quiet meal before I take a trip. Folks, I love what I do. I hate that I have to do it. I've been an itinerant for 20 years. I've traipsed much of the free world. I've shared the stage with the president. I'd rather watch a movie with my boy. When he was 18, I was preaching in a village in India, and I had to tell my boy happy birthday with a letter. I'm not the perfect example. A burdened one, but not the perfect example. As I was leaving, my bride said to me, she said, sweetheart, aren't you speaking for some company in Las Vegas on October 10th? I said, yes. She said, there's a balance due on that honorarium. I said, so? She said, should I send them a letter? I said, we trust God. He probably already convinced them. She says, you really have changed from those days of chasing stuff. While we were headed to the airport, I looked in the mailbox and there was the balance. To a T. God doesn't send me an email telling me he's in charge. Doesn't send me a fax. Doesn't have an app. Doesn't have Facebook. Got the book. Give more than you have. Henry Martin left left the love of his life, Lydia, and went to India around the time of William Carey. Learned the language and translated the Bible into Hindustani, but felt a call to go and preach to the Mohammedans of that time, modern-day Persia. The English Mission, London Mission Society would not give him the stipend, so he stowed away. Can you imagine? A man who had already sacrificed his love now is not heeding the advice of those who sent him on missions and stows away. Folks, nobody stows away to the Middle East. I don't know, whether you've been following the news and you know how those trips end. You're usually on home video with a headscarf saying death to something, and it's scary. But he stows away and translates the Bible into Persian and dies a commoner's death by the time he's 33. Give more than you have. The L stands for leave more than you take. David Livingstone, Blantyre, Scotland, a missionary's missionary, regaled on the knees of his father. Goes away to England, to Africa, and comes back 5 years later on furlough. And I paraphrase what he says. He says, the smoke that billows from 1,000 African villages pales in comparison to any sight you would, any sight in Scotland would pale in comparison. Been to Scotland? No, that's not true. Been to Africa? That ain't true. You have to have you want to leave more than you take. And you know the rest of the story. When he died, after Henry Morton found him, Henry Morton Stanley spent 4 months and wrote Livingstone of Africa. Read it. It's a 2-volume epic, brilliant read. He instructed the natives to cut out his heart and bury it in Africa and send his body back to Westminster. I haven't seen the monument to his heart in Africa. I've seen his grave at Westminster Abbey in London. Give more than you have. Leave more than you take. Now, folks, let me just caution you. There's only one time in this world where everybody on this side is going to say you've done good. That's when you're lying flat off your back. Your preacher's saying, you're the man. Right now you're the dead man, but you're the man. At that point in your life, you can say, I wish I had, or I'm glad I did. I wish I had is a life of regret, hesitation hill. I'm glad I did is, man, I did something. One of the motivational speakers of yesteryear Cabot Robert used to say, if you're incapable of doing anything, set yourself on fire. At least other people will come to watch you burn. Don't just stand there and occupy space. Do something. Give more than you have. Leave more than you take. Now hear me carefully. Humility, according to Fred Smith, is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking less often of yourself. That doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. We're the only ones who know how it ends. I don't understand why Christians walk around with long faces and short pocketbooks. If you know how it ends, act like it. Tony Evans says we're so busy telling people about a heaven we can't prove, when they try to look at our lives here, it's like hell on earth. Give more than you have, leave more than you take. Offer praise to the inner circle. Offer praise to the inner circle. Every morning I wake up, I tell that bride of mine, I honor your mother and your father, Christians who didn't say no when you brought home this Hindu boy. I know if your parents had said no according to the strength of Indian tradition, you would have obeyed them. But my father-in-law today will stand publicly and say, we could have said no, and our daughter would have obeyed. And we could have gone on with the rest of our lives, and she would have accepted it in the name of tradition. But with what face would we look at God today if you had a chance to become this somewhere else? We never know God's plan. You can't prove one iota of what's happening tomorrow. On bent knee, my saintly mother-in-law prayed every night, saying, don't only deliver him to the foot of the cross, make him a voice of reason in the very darkest parts of hell. How did C.T. Studd put it? Most people want to live within the sound of chapel bells. I want to build a rescue mission within an inch of hell. Next Sunday, I'll preach at hell's door, the slums of India. Give more than you have. Leave more than you take. offer praise to the inner circle, and I'm going to wind up with the W, whose applause matters. Someone asked me, Mr. Dunham, you preach all over the world, you speak all over the world. What would you like said at your funeral? They think they kind of got you a question. What would I like said at my funeral? First, he's still moving. I got things to do. I want you to hear proud husband, loving father. I want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. How do you give praise? How do you understand whose applause matters? If I can, I'm going to try to find something here that I want to read for you in a second, but I'm going to try to also combine it with, hang on, there it is. A story. The story is told of a violinist who had delivered a virtuoso performance to a very august gathering. Note after masterful note he played. He was now at the apex of his profession, the very zenith of his accomplishment. As he gingerly played that last note and rose, the audience rose with him. Their applause slowly began into a reverberated crescendo that you could have heard 3 blocks away as they clamored for an encore. But silently he started to slink back till he could find the back panels of a curtain that he was desperate to hide behind. He got behind those curtains and the handlers were pushing him out saying, "Go back, they're screaming for an encore." And he said to the handler, "Come with me." He took the handler to the corner of the stage and said, "Look in row 3, seat 2. There's one man not standing. He's actually sitting down. He's not clapping, and he's nodding his head in disapproval. That is my teacher." Whose applause matters? Are we doing what we do for minor halo adjustment? Now, I'm not here to put a guilt trip on anybody. Last time I checked, the majority of my funding for whatever I do comes from this nation, most giving nation in the world.
Amen. Amen.
But here's what one of your own said all those years ago, Daniel Webster. One of the men I admired in terms of his work because of his oratorical mastery. Was a Secretary of State, was a congressman and a senator. A family sacrificed his older brother's dreams and ambitions because they believed Daniel could make a greater contribution. He was sent away to the Exeter Academy at 15. By 20, he's giving great speeches, having graduated from Dartmouth. When this nation lost 2 of its greatest in Thomas Jefferson and John Adams on July 4th of 1826, 50 years to the signing of the date of the Declaration of Independence. A month later, there was a memorial for those 2 men, and the speaker was Daniel Webster. Here's one of his immortal quotes. "If we and our posterity reject religious instruction and authority, violate the principles of eternal ethics, trifle on moral injunction, and recklessly destroy the political constitution that upholds us, no man can say how sudden the catastrophe that will overwhelm us and bury all our glory in profound obscurity." Whose applause matters? When I traipse through India today and I ask them, which model of American church do you want to go after? They say the church of 1760, 1770 to about 1920. Ascending, a giving, a benevolent, a permanent, a church that believed not only in giving fish, but teaching people how to fish. I've been an itinerant. This year my boy turned 18. I've traveled since he was 3 months old. I've logged over 4 million miles on this body. This year he had to write an essay about the most influential person in his life, and I want to leave you with the words of a boy who was raised here with all the trappings. Set an example, folks, and your neighbors, your communities, your churches, your states, and your country will watch. As an itinerant father and husband, maintaining a close relationship with your family is hard, but my dad has managed as well as any man could. His trust in and dedication to my mom is a testament to the true definition of family. Despite the recognition he's achieved as a speaker and trainer, he includes us in every speech. My father's dedication to faith is another trait I hope to emulate in my own life. 11 months of the year my dad spends in corporate America making a living. The other months he spends doing mission work in countries such as India and Haiti. How to balance work, family, and faith is a lesson that my father has inspired in me by example. That's an essay this boy sent to colleges. Now here's the irony. I've never been there. I've been gone. I committed to the field, doing God's work. Had the privilege of being in Nagpur at the seminary. What's my son talking about? What kind of father have I been? Absentee. What's he looking at? See, wherever I am in the world, every night I say to my boy, you're mine and I love you. You're terrific and I'm proud of you. And then I say, son, I'm praying for you. See, when my boy sees me have obedience to an Almighty, I have earned the right to have him bow down to me in my absence. Sybil Standen said, discipline is not on your back, needling you with imperatives. It's at your side, encouraging you with incentives. The day you make yourself a slave to discipline, the world will become your oyster. I'll close with a quote from T.E. Lawrence, who said, all men dream, but not equally. Those that dream in the dark, dusky recesses of their mind wake by day to find that it was but vanity. But those that dream with their eyes open, pay attention to them, for they will change the world. I head back to my country tomorrow. Please stand in the gap. Amen. Please look at her with your eyes open. So the 80% have a chance to hear the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. God bless you.